Marquise Brown has been on fire.
Probably going to sign Marquise Brown to an extension after the year he's having.
Where do you got Jaylen Waddle?
Waddle a little bit ahead of Tyreek.
Look at the release.
There's your separation.
Great route.
Stutter and go. Gets by clean.
That is unbelievable.
Maybe the greatest catch I've ever seen.
Marquise Hollywood Brown, man, you talk about, he is on a heater, boy. Let me tell you something else, man. 3 games in a row now. In this last game against Philadelphia, I had him as just a straight up fade, big time. Made me look like an absolute idiot because the dude went absolutely off. Marquise Brown has been on fire, Zach.
NBA Jam rules. He's heating up games all the way. I think he's sitting at what? Wide receiver. We have him at a wide receiver 5 right now in like regular season, not Dynasty. Sorry, that was somewhat confusing. But yeah, he's great. And I think he was one of the players that coming into reception perception when I was initially going to it, his rookie year was so promising. Going back to like 2019, his 73.6 success rate versus man and 85.4 success rate versus zone. His press rates have always been kind of subpar, but like as a rookie, like that was incredibly promising. He came back that next year, kind of dropped those numbers and dropped it a little bit against man again last year at 62%. It's not what you want to see, but he didn't really see a ton versus man coverage. But I mean, this offense gives you a ton of looks at zones. He's paired up with Kyler Murray, who I'm a big fan of. I know he's a little like on the side of the not popular among the public opinion right now with all the Call of Duty news coming out, but you know, I like to shove that stuff aside. I don't think that's good analysis. I just like to bring it up. I think he's still somehow disrespected. Like coming into the year, you had him in like, I think he was him in like the 5th round of drafts. He's still like considered like a wide receiver 2 in Dynasty. No one wants to buy in on a guy that's kind of like just small and fast, but man, he's killing it out there. And I think this is the last week you have that like they call the DeAndre discount where you've got Hopkins coming back in 2 weeks. I'm still in. I don't think he's worth selling at this point. It's a good question to ask how much Hopkins is going to have left in the tank. I think he's coming to 30, 31, start aging down, and he's never been like the quick twitch receiver like in the slot. He could go that Larry Fitzgerald path, kind of revive his career a little bit, but I think it's interesting how much to ask. Like they're probably going to sign Marquise Brown to an extension after the year he's having, and you could be looking at your wide receiver 1 in Arizona. I think he's a great buy. I wrote a Dynasty article on him coming into the season, and when Matt was updating his rankings, I was kind of holding my breath a little bit. I was like, all right, where is he gonna? Can I still argue with him? Like, where is he gonna move Marquise Brown? And he's got him sitting at wide receiver 30, which I think is just disrespectful. So I was thrilled to see it. 1 spot above Keenan Allen, mind you. And I disagree. I think he's sitting at expert consensus ranking right now at around 28. So it's not like Matt's off of the view of the general public, but
right,
man, I think he's got all the chops. I think he can put up points without being a dominant X receiver. Like he doesn't have to go catch like those red zone threats that everybody else does. And I think with Hopkins coming back, those targets are there. There's a big enough pie in that offense that we can watch 30-plus-year-old Ertz lose some targets each game and keep Marquise Brown 10-plus. I think that's perfectly reasonable. That narrative there that like, oh, Hopkins is going to come back and kind of be the dominant one here. I think that window is going to close quick. I think he's still going to kind of keep it up the rest of the season, and you might see him move up into that like maybe like back end teens ranking for Dynasty rankings, anywhere like that 18 to 20, and 10 spots with Dynasty rankings is a huge value to me. I think that's a big buy in my brain.
You might be a guy that I have ranked a little too low. I do think he's a number 2. I don't think he's a number 1 receiver, but man, Kyler's treating him like a number 1 receiver. You know, he said after that week 1 game when he had, I think 6 targets, he's like, you know, Marquise Hollywood needs double-digit targets every single game, and like, you know, promises made, promises kept. He's had double-digit targets in every single game since then. But I really like the fit of Brown and Kyler together, and I love the way that they're manufacturing him looks too. Like they're getting him a lot of short area looks. It's pumping up his volume, and that's where he's kind of underrated as a zone coverage beater. I mean, and his zone coverage success rates have been strong and great throughout his career. I do think he's a really underrated player. And, you know, I'm just look at some of the guys I have ahead of him. And, you know, I think you could definitely argue that, you know, maybe he should be ahead of a guy like Pickens. He should be ahead of a guy like Elijah Moore, Brandon Ayuk. I mean, he's just in such a good spot as long as he stays in Arizona long term. So yeah, I think you make some really good points there, Zach. I'm not 100% ready to submit on this one, but I'll think about it for the next Dynasty update if he keeps doing what he's doing.
Where do you got Jaylen Waddle? Actually, I know Zach's got this. Zach, where does Matt Harmon?
Zach knows.
Where does he have Jaylen Waddle?
We're saying he's rocking him right at wide receiver 14, so high up there. It's not like he's throwing him to the wolves or anything. He's
But you don't think, Zach, you don't think that's high enough?
I don't. I personally think we were watching the Miami's offense this year, and I mean, obviously, like the Tua injuries kind of throwing some like clouds on that, but they're kind of using those two hand in hand. I mean, like we've seen them both boom weeks. They both shown that they can put up a ton of points, and they both shown up that they were always compared to each other. You know, everybody was like, oh, like he's the next Tyreek Hill, and I don't think anybody's really the next like Tyreek Hill, but I think when you're looking at it almost from like a data perspective and how they're using it, they're very similar in output to me right now. I mean, they're both sitting, I think Jaylen Waddle's on the year wide receiver 6, and I know Tyreek's right in that area, but there's a huge age gap, man. I mean, like if you're talking about players that can't afford to lose burst, when that burst goes for Tyreek, I mean, he's an amazing route runner. I think you've proved that time and time. I think everybody's always like, oh, you know, like he's not that great of a route runner, and I've heard you go to bat for him time and time again, but I think Waddle has shown everything that we really want to see him. He can do those short routes. He can do those screens to the house. He's a great deep ball catcher. I think they should be probably side by side with Waddle, a little bit ahead of Tyreek.
A little bit ahead of Tyreek. Wow. Is it? And you're just thinking because of the age?
I do. I think he's shown the talent. You've got the draft capital. I don't care much about college connections, but he's got the college connection to his quarterback. Let's throw that in there for narrative purposes.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, I was never a big Waddle fan, to be honest, coming out of college, and he's proved me a little bit wrong there in terms of what he can be as like a number one, the similar way Tyreek has. And if you're gonna tell me these players go at the end of the season, Tyreek Hill's wide receiver 8 and Waddle's wide receiver 10, then I'm taking Waddle 10 out of 10 times in Dynasty, because you're going to buy yourself 4 or 5 more years of production. And if you're going to get even close to similar like redraft stats out of them, I don't see any reason to have them ranked farther apart in terms of Dynasty rankings.
I think Zach makes a lot of good points. And this was as soon as I did the update and dropped it in the Discord, a couple guys really were willing to hold me accountable with the Jaylen Waddle thing. You know, I've got him at wide receiver 14. I have Amon-Ra St. Brown wide receiver 13 and Michael Pittman at 12. But I do have a tier gap between those guys, and I'm not quite sure why I do. You know, why, as I'm thinking about it, because Jaylen Waddle was number 1 in success rate versus man coverage among all the prospects coming in for 2021. You know, ahead of Devontae Smith, ahead of Jamar Chase, ahead of Rashad Bateman, ahead of all these guys we really, really like. I think as I'm looking, I don't know if I'm going to go ahead and put Jaylen Waddle at like wide receiver 8, because I have Tyreek Hill at wide receiver 9, but I'm not sure what in my own logic here, I'm not sure what separates him from a teardrop perspective from a St. Brown, from a Michael Pittman. I don't know that I can justify that. So I think at the very least, I will have to submit to Zach on this one and take the L and move Jaylen Waddle into tier 2 with these guys like AJ Brown and yeah. I'll take
just progress.
Well, I mean, I guess when you move my opinion based on like my own work, you know, I think that says something. I'm not taking the L, but as a ranker, I'll take the L and I'll make the progress there.